Okay.
In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Mystical Underground. Thank you for joining us. This is Rob McGregor and
Trish McGregor.
And our producer and tech magician, John Posey. You can go to themysticalunderground.com where we make regular blog posts and where you can find out about our books. Among them are Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, The Secrets of Spirit Communication, Sensing the Future, and Aliens in the Backyard. Our most recent book is called The Shift, Reports from the Mystical Underground. Trish's latest novel is White Crows, and Rob's seventh Indiana Jones novel, The Staff of Kings, is now available in ebook and audio, and it's free.
Our guest today is Meryl Ann Butler, who has just launched a unique online creativity community called Crescent Creativity Club. She's an international artist, author, editor, intuitive reader. She has a big bio, labyrinth maker, and workshop facilitator. Her lifelong interest in metaphysics and spirituality has taken her from her classical art training into the realms of visionary art and innovative aspects of creativity. She's also been a popular presenter at Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment for 30 years. Welcome, Meryl.
Welcome, Meryl.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey.
Okay, since we met, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just going to say that you started out in a school of traditional realism. That you're an instructor. Is that right?
Yes, I'm an instructor now. And when I went to that school, yeah, it was definitely based on the French, the old masters through the French line, through the Académie Julienne. And my teacher studied with Norman Rockwell, who studied with the teacher who studied in France.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
But you shifted at some point to what you call visionary art. Can you describe that for us?
Yeah. Describe the shift or what vision? Both.
Oh, you can both. Yeah. Why not?
Both.
Well, that's a really interesting story. I had my own art school for 10 years, and I was teaching traditional drawing and painting in the same tradition in which I was taught, and which I opened just a few months after I finished art school. And I was starting to feel like my art career wasn't connected with my spiritual life, and I wanted them to be more connected. And I was struggling with how that was working. And I was living in Louisiana at the time. That's where I had my art school with my husband, and I had a little girl, and I had my art school right there. So we came up to Virginia Beach to go to the ARE, and there was a guided imagery and music session, and you could ask a question that was important to you. And so that's what I asked. I said, how am I going to combine these two elements? And I had the most extraordinary vision that brought me to tears, even though I didn't really have words for it. And I saw myself flying through space on a unicorn, and all at once, yeah, it's amazing. It was amazing. All at once, the unicorn's mane and the unicorn's tail and my hair, which was long at the time, I had hair down to my waist, each one separated into 7 paintbrushes, painting the 7 chakra colors, painting these.
Oh my God.
Yeah, painting intertwining rainbows through space. And it was so profound. I mean, I came out of that crying, as many people do from a guided imagery and music session, and without really words, because it's all about symbols, you know. And so I knew that it was an answer. I couldn't articulate exactly what it meant, but I knew that it was an answer. And so I thought, I'm going to paint a picture of that to kind of gel it, in my mind. But we weren't going back home at that point. We were going up to New York to visit my parents. And my dad, as he always did, had tickets for us for a Broadway play. And it happened to be Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I sat there looking at him in this quilted garment with images of all his important dreams on it. And I thought,
jeez.
Yeah, I thought I need to wear my image, not just paint it and put it on the wall. But I didn't know how to quilt. And so I thought, well, how am I going to do that? So anyway, that was my intention. And when we got back to Louisiana, a woman had moved into our neighborhood 2 blocks away and was opening a quilting class in her home. And her first class was how to make a quilted jacket.
Hmm.
Wow.
So I
Talk about
signed up.
synchronicity.
I know. So I signed up and I made that jacket, and I thought it was all about making that one jacket. And it wasn't. As it turned out, about a year later, my husband died in a plane crash, and my daughter and I moved. I'm from New York, so I wasn't like in Louisiana on purpose. No offense to anybody in Louisiana, but so my daughter and I, and we were very interested in the Edgar Casey place too. So my daughter and I moved to Virginia Beach, and which was good for me because it was a day's drive from New York where my parents are, which is far enough, but not too far, if you know what I mean. And so we moved there, and then people who saw my jackets started ordering them, and the next thing you knew, I was in the wearable art business. That was for about 30 years.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened at that time that was also very synchronistic was I had just discovered I was allergic to oil paint. And after teaching
Oh my
oil
God.
paint in my own studio for 10 years, I was thinking, what am I going to do? And then my husband died and my world blew up. And so I didn't have an art school again for a long time. And so it turned out that the fabric, I wasn't allergic to that. So I just dove right in. And my intention with the fabric was always to figure out a way to make it look like I painted a picture. So yeah, I developed what I call textile impressionism, which is a technique where if you imagine an impressionist painting, and you can see those little brush strokes, what I do is each one of those brush strokes would be a little tiny cut piece of fabric, and I would blend them all together and create an image that way. And that's really fun because when people are looking at it like at a gallery, you can tell by their body language the minute they figure out it's fabric, because they do something like this.
Yeah, right.
They walk up and they think it's a painting and they assume it's a painting, and then bam, it's not a painting, and they're like, how did she do that?
Yeah.
She did that because she's kind of crazy. So yeah, so then because I wasn't doing oil paint for 30 years, I got unallergic to it. And after I cared for my dad for 7 years, and after that I reopened my art school. So I have it again now, and I am also again teaching traditional drawing painting, but I also teach fiber art and visionary art. And the visionary art was kind of launched by working in the fabric, but then I started getting much more in touch with my psychic abilities. That's, you know, I learned TM. I was pregnant with my daughter, and I meditated twice a day, every day for 25 years without missing a single meditation, including the day my daughter was born. But I noticed after 7 years, I just kind of got psychic.
That's interesting. So I watched the 7-minute YouTube video you have, and that shows a lot of, you were younger then too.
I was younger. That's 25 years old at least, maybe more. I know.
But the fabric artist was fascinating. Some of it looked kind of Egyptian to me.
Yes. Yes. Well, I have memories of past life in Egypt, and as well as Atlantis. And I was a speaker at Edgar Casey's ARE I still am, but since the 1980s. And a lot of people there who also had past lives said they knew that I had been there.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
Probably. What do you remember about Atlantis?
Oh, well, I remember I think my wearable art comes from there. I remember the kind of feel of spirituality. I mean, it all went, kaplooey in the end, but similar to Egypt and similar to older Judaism, that people really decorated clothing and their day-to-day objects with symbols that had spiritual meaning. Unlike today, today we have icons of big
Right.
business on everything we own. But I think that was a reminder, to live in your everyday life, to remember who we really are. And I have had people come up to me, particularly at the ARE, where there's a lot of people who tend to being psychic, saying that they kind of remember this kind of decorated clothing that I just kind of started doing as a part of that. Yeah.
Now, we met you on the Abraham cruise in March of
So
2023.
fun.
And our daughter sat next to you and was just captivated by your art because she's also an artist.
Yeah, I saw her work. It's really good.
Yeah.
It is good. I mean, we don't know where she got that. It's not from us. But she was that was, you were making the drawing of the spirit of Abraham. Can you tell us about that drawing?
Yeah, I did several. And so what I like to, I've been listening to Abraham since 1994. And
same with us.
Yeah, I'm primarily a visual person. Auditory learning is my least developed sense. So when I'm sitting there listening, I don't get it all unless I'm doing something with my hands, making something, being creative or whatever. And so that's one of the reasons I draw. Plus, I tend to see energies around Esther as she's channeling Abraham. And it starts out with me just seeing little traces of the energy. And then as I draw it, I see more and more. So it's kind of fun. I just see the beginning and I get that drawn. And then when that's done, I'm thinking there's no more left. And then I look up and then there's more. So it helps my brain integrate the kind of, I know the lesson, in what is meaningful to me. And people love to see them, and of course I sell them. They're called I have a series on my website called Mystic Visions, which are these colored pencil drawings, which some of them are of Abraham's spirit, some of them are other things, and then of course I do a reading for somebody. It's like an intuitive reading of their soul matrix pattern. And the pencils are a great method for this. I do them on black paper, which is interesting because your brain does different things. Our brain is used to making a dark mark on white paper, and that's where our brain wants to stay. And the minute you make a white mark on black paper, of course I add color to it, but it starts out with white marks on black paper, a different part of your brain is involved. So and it's fun, and it's meditative for me to make them, and people love to buy them, so it's good for everybody.
Now, have you shown these drawings to Esther of Abraham's spirit?
Esther, I don't know if Esther saw these. I did on the cruise. I did show Mark and some of the other staff, and they loved it. I don't know if Esther's seen them. Some of them have been posted. Esther did see my mandala of manifestation. Several years ago, I kind of had a vision of the mandala of manifestation, which is based on one of the stories that Abraham tells about manifesting. And basically, some woman called Abraham and wanted her lover, and Abraham said, you have too much stress about that. You have to think of other things and practice bringing other things into your life that are easier. And so Abraham started talking about butterflies, and the woman was mad. She didn't want to talk about butterflies. Abraham started talking about feathers, and the woman didn't want to talk about feathers. And Abraham's saying, you have to pick something. If you want to get practiced at manifestation, you have to pick something that you don't have negative stress about. Because this woman wanted a lover, but her stress was all about, I don't have a lover. So then Abraham starts talking about blue glass. And then basically the woman hung up on her. And so then after that reading, Esther kind of forgot, and she and her husband Jerry went out to lunch, and they walked to their restaurant, and Esther said she felt this amazing draw to go in and see what was in a shop. And they didn't see anything they liked until they went to the back, and they saw this whole wall of blue glass. all the kinds of blue glass you could imagine. And she didn't get it yet. And then they went out to eat. And then what was the next? Oh, before they got to the restaurant, it was after. Then they come out of the restaurant and they're walking across this field, and they say all of a sudden all these butterflies flew around them, and they had to stop talking because they were getting in their mouth, and they still didn't get it.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, Esther sees this little boy. Jerry saw him. This little boy, a toddler, running from the other side of the park directly to Esther. And Jerry says, "Do you know that kitten?" She's like, "No." And he comes up running and smiling, and he hands her a feather. And that's when she got it, that she had focused on butterflies, blue glass, and feather for enough time without stress to manifest it in her life. And the kicker is, the first time I heard that story, I was in my car listening to it on a cassette tape, which that tells you how long ago it was. And the minute the end of the story came, when she was talking about the butterfly, I was going 80 miles an hour on a big highway, and this butterfly comes right up my windshield and over my car. And then when I got out where I was going, I parked and opened the car door and looked down, and there was a feather.
Wow.
So that story was meaningful to me, and I know it has to do with manifestation. So I decided I would paint an image of that, and that's what I did. It was partly to help me manifest things, and partly for other people to look at to manifest.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Have you ever been in the hot seat?
Yes.
What
Yeah,
did
you got a prediction, didn't you, about your art?
I did. In 2001, I had all this artwork, visionary artwork, that everybody was telling me, you need to go to California and find a gallery because they're going to love your work out there. So I did. I went out there, and I was there for a little while, made connections, and I finally was about to go to a gallery to negotiate a show. And on the way, someone broke into my car and stole all the artwork. Is about
Oh my God.
about 15 years worth of art, including some of the stuff that you saw on that video, the Egyptian piece.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, and the gypsy piece.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, well, you never know. I mean, you never know. I mean, I think everything's good in the end. It was a little hard to get over that because suddenly, my art is hard to describe. People even say that saw pictures of it, when they see the real thing, they're like, "Oh my God, it's so different." So it just so happened that I happened to have a ticket for the Abraham event in San Diego, which was only 2 days after my stuff was stolen, and I was still pretty shaken up. So I did get in the hot seat, and so I asked about that, and I told what happened. Oh, it's very interesting. In the morning, I did a meditation, and I said, "Am I going to get in the hot seat?" Because it wasn't my first time in Abraham thing. I knew about, and I got the number 2 and the number 3, and I'm thinking, don't you know? I mean, it felt like I was either going to be the second person or the third person, right? And I'm like, but you're infinite intelligence. You don't know if I'm going to be second or third. So,
or maybe
anyway,
23rd.
Yeah, they were coming back and forth separately. So I saw them as 2 different numbers. So I got there a little bit late, and when I walked in, the first person was in the hot seat. So I went and sat down, and then when she asked for another person, I raised my hand and she picked me. So I was second. And then I told my story, and she said, "We have a lot to say about this, but it's time for a break. So we're going to break now, and you're going to come back right after the break." So I was second and third.
And third, all right.
Wow.
That's
How
interesting.
interesting.
That's the interesting thing about psychic stuff. It's hard sometimes to analyze from the perspective of 3D reality and Earth what those things mean. But in retrospect, it turns out to be correct.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So what did Abraham tell you?
She actually told me that that my art, that the stuff that was taken was old stuff. Of course, to me as an artist, I never started a retirement program. I figured I was investing my money in my artwork. So that was like, between $150,000 to $100,000 worth of stuff that I thought was my retirement plan. And she said, You know, that's all old stuff. You're going to be doing new and way cooler stuff, basically. And
Oh.
so she's right. I am.
Since your
That's
art,
incredible.
since your art is pretty unique, has any of that materialized? Anybody has seen it, or?
That's a great question. And of course, since this was 2001, we didn't have the internet yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am honored to have all of my artwork represented on the Los Angeles Police Department website of stolen art,
Wow.
Oh,
along with Rembrandt.
all right.
Huh. That's an honor.
So I'm
Yeah.
in
Damn.
good company. And they did a story on me. They came to interview me about it because it was big news then. Unfortunately, the story was set to print on September 13th of 2001.
God.
Which of course,
Oh,
which of
very
course
good.
by then stolen art wasn't a story. But
Yeah.
they have a file on me. So if anything ever gets found, all I have to do is call them, and I'm sure they'd love to do a follow-up story.
Wow.
I have always felt like the theft of $150,000 to $200,000 worth of work was going to come back to me worth more than that somehow.
Yeah.
And
Jeez.
the story of it is worth more than that if something's found. So I actually think the that big Egyptian piece that you saw on the video, Rob, was I think that's the one that's most likely to show up. And whoever stole it probably stole it for drug money and probably didn't have any idea of the value, and they probably sold it at a flea market and someone else. But I just intuitively know that that garment is in the collection of a costume person in Hollywood, right? Because where else would
Wow.
it get to?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm keeping my
That is
eye
cool.
out for any time Aida is going to be presented, because, you know, that's exactly, I mean, that garment was like a million times better than, you know, one that, God, what's her name, wore in Cleopatra. I mean, it had, you know, 900 separate pieces in it and stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, a costume person would be likely to have it in their collection waiting for a good time to use it. And I haven't actually done much on the website. So I do have, sometime this year, we're putting up the page of stolen art, and I'm going to promote it on the website because there were quite a few
Good.
pieces. 13 pieces were stolen, and somebody's got to have seen some of them somewhere, and
Yeah.
that'll make a great story.
Especially after all these
Would
years.
be.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Interesting.
maybe because of this podcast, somebody will hear or see this, and
There you go.
it might reappear. Who knows?
That's right. That's right.
Can you
So-
talk a little bit about creativity and how that's essential part of your life, and how it's linked to mysticism?
Well,
I mean, that's what we've been talking about, but
that's right. That's right. Now we can really talk about. Well, I think creativity is linked to a lot of things. I think it's actually linked. I think it's the lifeblood of actually being alive.
Mhm.
I think so too.
And in my creativity club, you know, some of the information that I have for people as they consider to join is and I'll let's see, I have it here, I can read it. This is what
Sure.
being creative does for you.
Mhm.
And this is all studied by top neuroscientists and researchers and doctors. It lowers stress, it reduces pain, it improves your immune function, it wards off depression, it increases
Wow.
happiness, it raises your IQ and your emotional intelligence, it improves your brain plasticity and brain function, it slows down and sometimes can even reverse the aging process.
We like that.
Yeah. The older I get, the more interested I am.
Right.
It releases endorphins and other neurotransmitters that are, you know, kind of make you feel good. It lowers cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It enhances your overall physical and mental health. And they even found that it adds longevity.
That's interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
That also sounds like the things I used to say when I was a yoga teacher describing what yoga is.
What yoga does.
The effects of yoga.
I think they're the same. And I
Yeah.
think that the place you get to
Uh-huh.
in the creative process is the same place that you get to when, you know,
Yeah, I think so
yoga.
too.
I do yoga too. And I understand them to be the same place.
Right.
So who doesn't want all of those things? And of course, you know, if you're going to be good at yoga, you have to practice yoga, right? So if you're going to be good at creativity, you need to practice your creativity muscles or exercise your creativity muscles.
Mhm.
And in this culture, that's not, you know, a lot of people
Right.
doesn't seem like an
It's
important.
not supportive,
It isn't. It isn't. And
especially with banned books now.
oh my God. And then so many people think they're not creative. I can't tell you, you know, I've taught thousands of students, and I can't tell you how many people are so destroyed about that. They're like, I'm not creative. Because, you know, when I was in second grade, I colored out outside the lines or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly creative. But anyway, Robert Epstein, I forget the book he wrote, but he said, creative potential is virtually shut down by early schooling in this country. And he says,
Wow.
yeah, he says significant creativity is within everyone's reach, no exceptions. So that means the health benefits. And of course, creativity makes you more psychic, because the more you
Yeah,
have those,
definitely.
the better your body feels, and the more you have the endorphins and stuff. I believe you know, you get used to being in that space that you get to when you're doing yoga or meditation or creativity, and that's the space where psychic intuition happens also.
Uh-huh.
And synchronicity as well.
Absolutely. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
creativity, psychic intuition, and synchronicity, I believe they're all the same thing.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Because
Yeah.
I think I love the topic of synchronicity, and I know you guys do. I think that synchronicity is happening to all of us 100% of the time, but we don't notice. You know,
Mhm.
Winston Churchill said, many men stumble over the truth, but most of the time they pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing had happened. And
Yeah,
I think that happens with synchronicity, because
I think so too.
every time I've noticed synchronistic events in my life, I could backtrack and look at the choice points where I
Yeah.
made a choice to do something that the average person might not have made, because
Mhm.
I was following a strong inner guidance. And since most people in this society are taught to not be connected to their inner
Right.
guidance, they don't hear it. And
Mhm.
if you don't hear
Well,
your
most people are taught to deny it, you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had this gorgeous pair of teal colored silk pants that I had bought, and I love them. And they happen to go with all of my fancy outfits that I used when I spoke at presentations. And I was thinking to myself, I want a jacket exactly the same, you know, in this color and in part of the set. And
Uh-huh.
I thought about that for 2 years. And one day I was driving down an old country road somewhere, and drove right by this really dinky looking thrift store. And it was like a hand reached out of that thrift store and pulled me in. And I went in,
Yeah.
and there was the jacket in my
Wow.
size, made by the same company, and in the same
Ah.
exact color. And for like
I
3
love it when stuff like that happens.
know.
That's great.
Yeah, I had someone at the ARE ask me if I'd teach psychic shopping.
Yeah, really? That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Sometimes there's a certain feeling that comes about when these events happen. You just kind of sense something is about to happen. I've told this story. I've told this story before on this podcast, but I was taking a couple to Miami. We were on
I love this
I-95,
story.
and we were in a very heavy spiritual conversation at the time. One man was kind of a new age preacher, and who was there, and a car goes by, and the license plate said Zen 665, and he said, "Wouldn't it be interesting if if it had said Zen 666? What would that mean?" Not 2 minutes later, a car goes by with a license plate Zen 666. I mean, what are the chances of that?
yeah,
Plus, you saw it some years later.
Yeah, and then like 2-3 years later, I saw that car again.
and that's funny.
Yeah.
Car with that license plate, anyhow.
I was talking to my girlfriend one day about Nikola Tesla and his, he
Oh,
really
yeah.
the number 369, and my birthday turns out to be 369, my birth month, my birthday, and then what the year adds up to. Oh, that made me extra interested in, and I had just been talking to her about it. And I think we were off the phone a little bit, and I drive by, and a car pulls in front of me, and it said Nikola on the test on the.
Ah, God, it was him.
My
Yeah.
friend Robert calls license plates the American haiku.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
We had a guy coming on our synchronicity blog for a while who that was his specialty, looking for license plates that have particular numbers on them. Remember that guy, Rob? And he had all kinds of oddball, things, but it was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if we live in a holographic universe, everything has meaning. So whatever you
Exactly.
focus on and decide is going to have meaning for you will reflect that particular facet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so true. So
I
true.
can tell you a cool story about synchronicity since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, when I was still doing all my quilty stuff, I did a lot of international peace events with quilts. And so one of them was Young Storytellers for Peace were going to the former Soviet Union, all the countries, and telling stories. And they asked quilters if we would make a illustrative quilt to illustrate our favorite story. And their idea was they would give these quilts as gifts to the different places where they would go. And then they would tell you when they came back, they would tell you where the quilt ended up, so you could have a relationship with whoever. Now, of course, this is before the internet. But anyway, so I made a quilt from my daughter's favorite book, which is The Magical Rainbow Man by Shahastra, and it showed the globe with the North America and Asia and Russia being kind of connected by a rainbow. So I made that and gave that to them, and they took their trip. And they came back, and I didn't hear from them for a pretty long time. So I wrote to them and I said, so great, I'm interested to find out where my quilt went to. And they said, we are so embarrassed. They said, for some reason, we have no idea where that one quilt went. We have records for everything else, but we don't know where that went. And they said, we think it might have been the Peace Committee in Odessa, but we're not even sure. So I'm like, okay. So the following year, I was arts consultant for the Center for Improving U.S.-Soviet Relations in Baltimore, and Baltimore and Odessa are sister cities. So we went to Moscow and Odessa, and peace thing. And I was speaking to Russian artists about using images to create global, personal, and planetary peace. And
were you speaking in Russian?
No, but I had to be translated. And boy, that's tricky because I'm a humorous speaker, but not all the humor translates well.
Right.
So,
Right.
So anyway, so when we got to Odessa, we didn't know this. The Odessa committee that was meeting us said, we have a group of people that want to invite you into their homes for dinner by 2s and 3s. And I think that we had 17 people, so we were all going to be divided up. And I was, by the way, wearing one of my wearable art creations. So anyway, so we got divided up, and myself and 1 or 2 others went to this woman's house and we had dinner. And so she's asking about what we do and stuff. I had my little book of photos of all my artwork. So I said, well, I do fiber art, like what I'm wearing. And she said, yeah, I love that. And she said, the fact that you were wearing that jacket she said, I went up to the person in charge of the program and said, I want that woman at my dinner table. So that's why I ended up in the table, because of what I was wearing. So I showed her the book, and she gets the picture of the lost quilt. And she says, oh my God, did you do this? And I'm like, yeah. And she said, that quilt is hanging in my school.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Russia's a pretty big place to lose something in, right?
Yeah, right.
So then I proceeded to tell her the whole story about how it was lost. And so after dinner, her best friend Ludmila, who was also a teacher at the school, comes up to me and she looks all kinds of stressed out. And she says, I have to talk to you. Let's go to the library. And I'm like, you know what? I just met this woman. So in the library, she's looking down the floor and she says, I have to confess. And I'm like, what? And she said, when Young Storytellers for Peace came, they presented the quilts, 2 quilts, your quilt and another quilt that wasn't as pretty as your quilt. And she said, they presented them to our school and to the Odessa Peace Committee at the same presentation at the same time. And she said, after the quilts were shown, they were wrapped up in bags. And she said, the Odessa Peace Committee they have, their office is a hole in the wall. They would have folded that away and hid it. And she said, when I saw your quilt, I knew it was for children to see. So when no one was looking, I switched the packages.
Oh, that's funny.
Went home with the other quilt. And so that's how I found out. And she was crying. She says, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, you did exactly the right thing. I am so happy. And we were crying and hugging in each other's arms. And I thought, the universe brought me the people that could tell me where the quilt is. But guess what? They brought Ludmila, the only person that she felt could give her forgiveness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
So it was like a complete thing.
That is
So
fascinating.
then, the following year, I did the U.S.-Soviet Children's Peace Quilt Exchange with that school in Odessa. It was school English-speaking one night in Odessa. And I thought, well, the universe is telling me to do that project with this school. So,
That is great.
That's quite a synchronicity that
That's
you
incredible.
made that connection and all the possibilities of where it could be in Russia.
I know, it's a big place. It was just, but the thing is, you look back at the choice points. So number one, I was wearing a wearable art jacket that spoke to the world about who I was.
Right.
And when Ina saw it, she was very fashionable. She made all her stylish clothes. When she saw it, she made the connection with me vibrationally. So, to me, if I hadn't been wearing that jacket, another person could have gone home with her.
Right.
They never would have found out. So there's always, to me, there's always choice points, and there's usually a few of them. It's sort of like, Dr. Zhivago and, the girl. What's his girl's?
Yeah.
I
can't remember.
Yeah, but they pass like 2 ships in the night and they don't connect with each other right away. And if it makes a good story, but if they had both been meditators, they would have met each other sooner, I think. So or yoga.
What does your daughter do? What does your daughter do?
My daughter's a doctor. She went to
doctor.
She went to the Casey Riley School for massage and became a massage teacher there, and then she became a osteopath. She went to Virginia Tech. She was actually there when they had that massacre. And
oh God.
So I was in California. I woke up, opened the thing in the morning, it's like 13 people dead at your kid's school. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh God.
So I called her. Now that was the biggest spiritual thing in my life, I think. I called her cell phone and it went to voicemail. And I just said, I heard what happened. Give me a call when you can. And it was 2.5 hours before I heard from her. And I meditated the whole time. And I got to the point where if she was dead, I was still knowing that she was okay in her soul. And that is a hard place to get to. I have to tell you.
Yeah, that is.
It took a lot of everything that I know to do to get there. And then she called me, and of course she was okay. But you know what those kids
What did she do? How did she avoid it?
Well, she was in the Edward Via Osteopathy School is in a little different place on campus, a little further away. But she said she was in class that morning, and she said all of a sudden everybody in the room cell phones started pinging at once.
Oh boy.
And when they looked, they found out what was happening. And but the interesting thing was that they made memorials. The kids before the end of the day, the kids made memorials
Oh,
for everybody, including the shooter.
jeez.
Wow.
And there is a very spiritual perspective. They're understanding that the
Yeah.
shooter was so damaged.
Mhm.
And by the time the parents came in the next day, they took the memorial for the shooter down.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
the kids had the right idea. So I
Yeah.
kept in touch with her. And of course, I made her healing quilt, and I made a quilt for the university about healing hands around Virginia
Mm.
Tech.
Oh.
And part of
Yeah.
it was to raise money, to raise
Mhm.
awareness, to raise funds, because they had to pay for a lot of mental health stuff for everybody there.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, so she's a doctor now. She has my granddaughter who's 11. My daughter who's a doctor decided to have her baby at home, and everyone like, "You're a doctor. Why are you having your baby at home?" She says, "Because I know what happens in hospitals." And
Yeah.
so theoretically wasn't invited to the birth and I was sad about that, but I was invited to drop off sushi with her the day she was in labor. So I did drop off the sushi, and she ate one bite of sushi, and then she's like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Yeah, you weren't in labor before this. That is it." And the midwife didn't make it in time.
Really?
Oh,
So I
jeez.
caught the baby. And I have to tell you, this is another psychic thing. When I was buying the sushi, this baby voice, clear as day, came into my head and said, "Grandma, I'm waiting to get born till you get here because I want you to catch me." And of course,
Wow.
I wanted to catch her. And my
Oh
daughter
my God.
in labor for 3 days. She was in,
Yeah.
this was like
Wow.
Wednesday or Thursday already. She was in labor for 3 days, and the midwife was keeping in touch, and she was in mild labor, and the midwife was just saying, you just got to go with it. It's not here yet. And
Yeah.
the minute I got there, she went into hard labor, and I caught the baby. So, I think babies
God.
decide when they're.
Oh yeah.
Mila and I are
Definitely.
really close.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Where does
So-
she live? In Virginia Beach? In Norfolk?
No, they live in the other side of Virginia, about 5.5 hours away.
Mhm.
But usually I meet my daughter halfway to pick her up, or my daughter and her husband are divorced now, and he lives close to me. So a lot of times he goes and picks Mila up, and then I get to visit. So we get to visit, and we do Zoom.
Oh, that's good.
Mm.
Oh
Zoom.
yeah, of
So,
course.
yeah. Meryl,
Oh.
you've been a speaker at Edgar Casey's Association for Research and Enlightenment for years. Can you talk a little bit about your work there and what you've done? And if that's
Yeah.
And also, what it's like. What is it like there? It must be really cool.
It is pretty cool. I say that a little tentatively because when I first moved there, when you live far away, it seems like this big, huge thing. And it well, I was born in New York City. So when
Yeah.
I got there, I expected, I don't know, taller buildings. I don't know. But I got involved. I got there in 1983, right after my husband died, and I got involved with everything right away. And it was a really big part of my spiritual development. And I'm grateful for everything. And I did immediately, but by 85 or 86, I think I was speaking. Back then, it was very interesting.
Huh.
My topic was always creativity. However, nobody would sign up for a workshop on creativity because back then everybody thought they weren't creative.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
Yeah. And so we had to fool them into coming by choosing different words. And so we would put a different title and, kind of be cagey about what the description was. And I had so many people during those years come up to me and say, "I loved your workshop. It was the best workshop I've ever been to here." Or some people said the best workshop in my life. And I didn't realize I was creative, and I'm so glad I found out. But they all said, if I had known what this was really about, I would not have come.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
how we got. Now that's changed. And that was interesting because that was at a time when the color orange was not a good color in retail sales. Orange is the color of creativity because it's the first chakra, which
Interesting.
is positive action, which is red, and then the third chakra, which is about consciousness.
It's about balance.
Yeah, and you combine basically, the first chakra is basically procreative sex, right? It's all
Right.
about procreativity. And the yellow chakra is more about, bringing in mental and decisions. So when
Uh-huh.
you have raw procreativity and bring it in with consciousness, that's where you get good sex. But it's also where
Yeah.
you get creativity. So orange, because it's the mixture of red and yellow, is creativity and
I
it's
was just about to ask what does it mean if you're attracted to yellow and red? So I guess that's orange. So, yeah.
Now you know, John.
there you go. So so anyway, the interesting thing was during that period of time, orange was like anathema. Like any product that was orange, retailers wouldn't buy it because it wouldn't sell.
Huh.
And so during that period of time, which was like the 70s, 80s, and well, not so, yeah, the 60s, the 60s, they were into all colors, but late 70s, 80s, and 90s, people were convinced they were not creative. They were dealing with a lot of oftentimes sexual abuse issues. So
Uh-huh.
it was all about that orange chakra stuff. And it's very interesting to know that now you can go buy orange. It's hard to remember that you couldn't, but
Yeah.
that's a reflection of how the vibration has changed. And people today, and we've had all kinds of people like Julia Cameron come out with the Artist's Way, and people are more
Right.
interested in reconnecting with their creativity because it's our lifeblood.
Uh-huh.
If you're not creative, you're like suffocating to death.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
you built a labyrinth there at
Yes.
Tracy Center?
Yes. Okay. And I think we have time. I have a labyrinth story.
Oh yeah, don't worry.
I learned about labyrinths in 1992. I was speaking at a kaleidoscope conference in Baltimore, and I'm also a kaleidoscope designer. And they're like mandala images, right? So it's all the same round stuff all over. And so the gal who had the conference had engaged these two hotel rooms with two bedrooms in them for speakers to stay in. So I was in one and I had my daughter with me. And then there's some person unknown to me was in the other one. And the gal who ran the conference said, "Oh, you'll probably see her." But we didn't. I was there 3 days and I never bumped into the person who was sharing because we had completely different schedules. So anyway, I was busy doing my stuff and giving presentations, and I kept walking by this room and looking in the window, and there was this beautiful labyrinth laid out there with rainbow colors, and the room was supposed to be open for you to go in there and check it out at different times, but it was always locked when I went by. And then the end of the conference came, and I went by the room, and the labyrinth was gone, and my heart was broken. I was like, I feel so drawn to that. I want to find out more about that. What is that? So I went back to the hotel room to pack up my stuff. And finally, I got to meet the gal who was sharing the other room. And she was the person with the labyrinth.
Oh,
Of
interesting.
course, right?
Now, what do you mean? What kind of labyrinth? What was it built out of?
Hers
in
was
her room?
canvas. Hers was canvas. So it was painted on
Okay.
canvas and laid out.
Huh.
So I told her, I'm like, "Oh my God." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have time, to lay it out for you. I would lay it out for you right now so you could try it. But I'm on my way to West Virginia to speak at another conference." And I said, "Huh, I'm also on my way to West Virginia to speak at another conference."
Wow.
And we were speaking.
Another synchronicity.
I know. We were speaking at the same conference. And so
Jeez.
got there early and met. And before everybody else got there and before we had to do anything, she grabbed the labyrinth and we laid it out in a cabin and I got to walk it. And it was so transformational.
Wow.
So the difference between a maze and a maze is a game that has paths where
Yeah.
you have to choose and you can get a dead end. And that engages your left brain, which is trying to figure out a game. But the labyrinth is just one path that's circuitous. But if you just put one foot in front of the other, you get to the end. And so therefore it's meditative. And so I was hooked. I built my own labyrinth. I made a canvas one right after that. And then I was the first person to bring it to the ARE. So it was canvas. I made it the exact size to fit in the ARE auditorium room. And so that was 1992. I was the first person to bring that there. And then in, I don't know, 90.
Now, did the canvas have paintings on it?
You paint the lines on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Nietzsche painted hers with all kinds of colors. Hers was a little
Uh-huh.
smaller than mine. Mine was 32 feet across because that's how big the ARE conference room is.
Yeah.
And so I had just painted the lines on it so people could follow it and walk it. And when
Right.
canvas, you can lay it out on carpet and it won't slip around. And so
Huh.
then a few years later, they asked me to paint one on their patio because they were going to chop up the patio in a year, they said. And they thought, we'll let this crazy artist do her thing. So I painted one. It was 48 feet across.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
got help. And it was so popular. I think it was 7 or 8 years before they finally chopped up the lot that
God.
people got to walk it. And one time on the Labyrinth's second birthday, we would go back every year to repaint, because it would start to get chipped.
Uh-huh.
So on the Labyrinth's second birthday, it was hot. I was there and I had volunteers and we were repainting the things. And I went into the building to wash up. I was so exhausted. I wanted to go home and take a Epsom salt baths. And my friend Elizabeth comes walking out and she said, I'm so sorry I didn't get to come volunteer with you and help paint the labyrinth, but I want to see what it looks like. You want to come up with me? It was up on top of this big hill. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to climb that hill again. But I did go up with her and we noticed that when we got there, a man was pushing a woman in a wheelchair through it. And I make, whenever possible, I make all my labyrinths wheelchair accessible. And so it seemed very sacred. So there's this second story porch at the ARE Health Building that you can access by stairs outside. So Elizabeth said, let's go up there and watch. So we did. And we felt very prayerful. And we were kind of sending good prayer energy to this couple. And it's pretty big labyrinth. And this porch is pretty far away. So when they got to the middle, we saw that they were talking with each other, but we were too far away to hear anything. And the woman gets up out of the wheelchair and holds the bar and walks the entire way out.
Wow.
Now, this labyrinth 48 feet across, but the path is the size of 3 football fields.
Wow.
And so this was very slow. It probably took her at least a half an hour, and she was doing 1 foot at a time, and he was obviously caring for her. And while I was up there meditating, I got told that she had MS. So, and I know that MS patients have good luck in the labyrinth, or good results. So suddenly Elizabeth and I had this feeling that she needed to come out of the labyrinth in kind of some sort of fanfare. So we came down the steps from the porch. She still didn't see us because she's looking down. And we stood at the entrance, which is also the exit of the labyrinth. And we put our hands up kind of like you're doing London Bridge to make a portal. She didn't see us till she was 3 feet away. And she looked up.
Wow.
Look on her face. And she walked through the portal that we had created. And the next thing we know, everybody's crying and hugging. We don't know each other's names yet or anything. We're all crying.
That's great.
And we're hugging, and it's wonderful. And then she says to me, she said, I hope you can tell me who built this labyrinth, because I've been walking it every day this week and I've been wanting to know. And I said, it's me.
That is great.
That's great.
Story.
And
Great
she did
story.
have
Great
MS.
story.
And she told me her goal in walking it, her husband had pushed her through every day. And this was her last day before she went home. And she said her goal had been to see if she could get strong enough by getting pushed through to walk out. And they were both amazed at what she was able to do. And she said, well, now I want to build a labyrinth at home. And I said, well, it just so happens that I did a labyrinth workshop not long ago at the ARE, and their bookstore still has all the books on how to build them. So if you go down there, you can.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
That's a great story.
John, I was wondering if you could put up any of Meryl's art. Is that possible? John?
Sure. I mean, just go to the website, or do we want to talk through that, or do we want to talk to the specific files she sent, or?
Well, yeah, we could just take a look at
Yeah,
one
just
of
take
them.
a look at what we've got.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
Just
you
a
want to pop
sampling.
them up, I can say what they are or something, whatever.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
It's fun to create art based on synchronicity. Okay, so this is the mandala that I was talking about that was based on Abraham's story of the butterflies, the blue glass, and
Right.
Oh, right.
and so the
Okay.
butterflies you can see the feathers are little feathers in the center. The blue glass are those little blue glass that looks like beads
Right.
around the
Yeah,
outside.
that's beautiful.
And the butterflies are coming out in a Fibonacci spiral, which is a
Okay.
powerful sacred geometry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Nice.
these, I have prints of this. I have the original, but we just built a page on my site for prints. I have G clay prints made. They're pretty expensive, but beautiful. I mean, when I put them next to the original, you can't tell the difference hardly. I have trouble.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys
So-
got a print. I gave you a print. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
It's a good-
did, and
It's
I
a
brought
good
it
quality.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good, G clay is a good quality.
So if anyone's listening to this just on audio and you'd like to see some of Meryl's art, here's another one. This is interesting. You can go to her website. Where should they go to look for your art, Meryl?
They should go to Ocean View arts with an S.com. That's
Okay,
my
great.
website.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this is the one that I did of while I was
While you were sitting
actually
next to
while I was
Megan.
sitting next to you guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Drawing
Yeah.
Abraham. And there's a fun story with this one too. I posted it on one of the Abraham sites. I joined the site. So I was a new
Oh, I
member.
love this story. This
Yeah.
is the number synchros. Okay.
I know. So I posted it on the site, and the admin has to filter the stuff. So when I posted it, it wasn't up automatically. The admin had to look at it. So I posted around midnight, and the next morning I woke up and I thought I'll see if they posted it. And I posted it, and there were like 250 likes and 50 comments, and I started answering the comments. And so then the next day I had a Zoom call with my web guy. And at that point we were still building the Crescent Creativity Club portion of the website. And I decided I wanted to offer that monthly fee. They get a lot of really cool things with that. They get 2 live things a month with me, and then a bunch of other cool benefits, and a Facebook private page about creativity. And I wanted to offer it for a really good deal. And I had told them I wanted to offer it for the price of, a fancy Frappuccino. So we decided that the price would be $7.77. And that's like the introductory rate. So after I got off the Zoom call with him that day, I decided to go to that Abraham page and see how many more likes I got on this picture. And it was 777 likes.
I love it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Right next to it, to the right-hand side, and also under it were 2 posts about the number 777 and what it means. And so I got all that captured on a screenshot to prove that it was all there at one time. And then I took the screenshot showing all the 777 stuff and posted it on the same site again. And they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing.
Yeah. And how did you make this? Was this with markers, or what were you using?
Good question. This is Prismacolor pencils on
Okay.
black paper. So what it does is it gives the feeling of light emerging from darkness, which is really, what we want to be. I mean, I read a quote the other day that said, if you notice there's darkness all around you, check, you might be the light.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what we're called to do. So that's
that's really interesting.
Well, when you were sitting next to Megan, you were using colored pencils.
Yes, I was.
Right?
That's exactly what I was drawing with that special paper.
Wow.
Yeah, because I remember watching that and thinking, oh my God, who is this woman? This is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I bring my colored pencils will travel.
Yeah, really.
Well, listen, Meryl, Nigel has just woken up here. And he's,
it must be time.
Yeah, right. He knows when it's 2:00.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well.
It was great having you.
Oh, it's wonderful talking to you.
Fun talking to you.
Thank you. And I invite
John,
you and everyone else to the website.
John, when will this go up? This episode?
This audio will be next week, and then this will probably be our second YouTube post. So
Oh, okay, great.
yep. So
Okay,
but
great.
more to come
Yay.
on that date. Yep.